In this chilling story, I find myself entangled in a nightmarish sequence of events, triggered by a series of mysterious perfumes delivered to my doorstep. Each fragrance seems innocent at first, but with every spritz, I am drawn deeper into a world of horror that unveils a dark and hidden past connected to these enigmatic scents. As I navigate this terrifying ordeal, I uncover a malevolent force lurking behind the fragrances, with each revelation bringing me closer to a truth I might wish I had never discovered. The first perfume arrived on an ordinary Tuesday. I found the small, unmarked package on my doorstep, with no indication of its sender. Inside, nestled among layers of bubble wrap, was a beautifully designed bottle of perfume. The label read Eau de Mr. With no further details. I was intrigued but skeptical. I hesitated before applying the scent, finally deciding to use it that evening. The fragrance was exquisite, floral and musky, with an undertone that felt oddly nostalgic. However, soon after I used it, I began experiencing unsettling visions. Shadows moved in the corners of my eyes, and I could hear whispers of voices from nowhere. I brushed it off as an overactive imagination. The second perfume arrived the following week. It was a deep, dark bottle with a label marked more enigmatic. Again, no return address. This time, the scent was rich and smoky, evoking a sense of melancholy. I applied it, and immediately felt an intense chill in the air. That night, I dreamed of a grand, decaying mansion. In the dream, I wandered through its dimly lit halls, encountering glimpses of figures that seemed to vanish upon closer inspection. As I received more of these perfumes, each with a more sinister name and a more disturbing fragrance, the visions grew increasingly vivid and terrifying. I saw scenes of old-fashioned parties, with people dressed in 19th century attire, their faces twisted in agony. The fragrances seemed to pull me into these scenes, making me feel as though I was not merely observing, but participating in these events. Determined to understand the source of these horrifying experiences, I started investigating the perfumes. I learned that each bottle was linked to a series of tragic events and unsolved disappearances. The perfume bottles were connected to a man named Victor Fontaine, a once celebrated perfumer who vanished mysteriously decades ago. His name was whispered in connection with a series of gruesome murders that had occurred in the area where I now lived. The more I delved into Victor Fontaine's past, the more the visions intensified. I saw glimpses of his workshop, where he conducted bizarre experiments with fragrances. It became clear that these perfumes were not just scents but vessels for dark memories and malevolent entities. Each fragrance seemed to encapsulate a piece of Victor's tortured soul and the pain of his victims. The final perfume arrived with no label, just a note that read, "For the truth." This time, the scent was overpowering, sour and acrid. The moment I applied it, I was thrust into a harrowing vision. I saw Victor Fontaine himself, his eyes hollow and his face twisted in rage. He was in the midst of a ritualistic ceremony, surrounded by figures who seemed to be pleading for their lives. In this vision, I realized that the perfumes were not only a means of revealing Victor's dark past, but also a way for him to exact revenge. He was using these fragrances to torment those who dared to uncover his secrets. The experience left me shaken, and I knew I had to destroy the remaining perfumes. I burned the bottles, hoping to rid myself of the haunting presence that had invaded my life. However, the memories lingered, and I was left with a profound sense of dread. The truth I had uncovered was far more horrifying than I had ever imagined, and the darkness that Victor Fontaine had left behind continued to loom over me. As I watched the last of the perfume bottles turn to ash, a sense of relief washed over me. The scents and visions that had plagued me for weeks were finally gone, or so I hoped. However, deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that Victor Fontaine's dark presence was still lingering. In the days that followed, I tried to return to a semblance of normal life. I moved the remaining items from the strange occurrences into storage, hoping to put the past behind me. Yet, the nightmares persisted. I continued to see flashes of the mansion, the sorrowful faces, and Victor's vengeful gaze. One night, I received another package. It was small and wrapped in plain brown paper, with no return address. Trembling, I opened it to find a single, plain bottle of perfume. The label read simply Eau de Vérité, truth water. An icy chill ran down my spine. Had Victor Fontaine managed to send me one final message? Despite my fear, I knew I had to confront whatever this was. The nightmares had already disrupted my life enough. I needed to face this head on. I applied a small amount of the perfume, bracing myself for the worst. The moment the scent touched my skin, I was pulled into an overwhelming vision. I found myself in a dark, labyrinthine corridor. The walls were lined with mirrors, reflecting fragmented images of my past and present. Each reflection showed a different version of me, some in anguish, others in despair, and a few with a menacing smile. I felt a growing sense of dread as I walked through this maze of my own fears and regrets. At the end of the corridor, I encountered Victor Fontaine. He was no longer a ghostly figure, but seemed corporeal and menacing. His eyes bored into mine with a mixture of anger and sorrow. He spoke in a low, chilling voice that resonated with the pain of his victims. "You sought the truth," he said, "but truth is not what you expected. It is a curse that binds you to the darkness I left behind." I tried to respond, but my voice caught in my throat. Victor's presence grew more oppressive, and the mirrors around us shattered, creating a whirlwind of reflections. The faces of the victims from his past seemed to reach out to me, their expressions pleading and accusing. Desperate, I tried to find an escape. I ran through the corridor, but the reflections turned into a nightmarish vortex, pulling me back. I realized that to free myself from this torment, I needed to confront my own fears and accept the reality of what had happened. In a final act of defiance, I faced Victor head-on and demanded release. I told him that I would not let his darkness control my life any longer. As I spoke, the mirrors began to crumble, and the oppressive weight of his presence started to lift. Victor's face softened, and for a moment, I saw a glimmer of remorse in his eyes. With a final, mournful look, he vanished, and the labyrinthine corridor dissolved into darkness. I was left alone, with only the remnants of the perfume bottle in my hand. I woke up the next morning in my apartment, feeling an eerie calm. The nightmares had ceased, and the oppressive presence of Victor Fontaine was gone. Yet, the experience had left a lasting mark on me. I knew that while I had escaped the immediate horrors, the memories of what I had faced would remain with me forever. I moved away from that apartment, seeking a fresh start. I buried the remnants of the perfume bottles in the deepest part of my storage, hoping to leave the past behind, but I also kept a small vial of the last perfume as a reminder of the darkness that had nearly consumed me and the courage it took to confront it. The story of the cursed perfume serves as a haunting lesson that sometimes the truth we seek can be more horrifying than the mysteries we wish to leave buried.